Good morning, everybody. It is Jillian. I had to reconfigure my study space because I wanted to be in the family room with my dog and make sure she's okay. Because if I'm stuck some other room doing my work and my dog's stuck in another part of the room, I feel like, she misses me and I don't want to be away from my puppy. She's my dog. And so I get to look at her on the couch and she gets to look at me on my table near the window, which actually is really perfect. And so I've been studying black holes and everything because now that my gut is clear, it's becoming easier to process the information. I've been studying little bit by little bit of everything to do with astronomy, with physics. It has everything to do with why humans live and why humans die. And we've been stuck in a compartmentalized world where we think the human body and our belief systems are completely separate from the whole, from the universe, and it's not. And so the premise of my book is understanding the micro and the macro, how they're both connected. But we have to find evidence, or I have to find evidence to show how things work at the macro level to then show connection to the micro level. And that's the same thing with the technology when it comes to running companies, understanding the enterprise level versus the service level, understanding, the microcosmic part of our body to the macrocosmic part of our society. And then everything is like, infinite sacred geometry. But it's also wading through all the words that seems to stop people from understanding things, because words do create worlds and they do compartmentalize ideas. And so when you're stuck in a certain jargon of a certain industry, you kind of stay in that jargon in that industry. You don't realize that, okay, here's astronomy and physics, and they're also interrelated to biophysics, biochemistry, bioastronomy, I guess, if you want to, call it that. I've never seen a word bioastronomy, but that would be really apropos. And so studying physics and studying astronomy and studying black holes has given me a bigger picture to work from. Also, I was studying some of the theories, as far as like Fred Hoyle, which I've heard of some of his theories around panspermia, which actually I've actually gravitated towards that. Okay. Panspermia is where the viruses are in the universe and they are carried through asteroids and meteorites, and they are life and they do promote life in an environment that can hold it. And so his theory about panspermia, that's how life gets created on Earth, actually is very viable. And then there's this whole steady state theory. The steady state theory is where everything is balanced in proportion, the pluses and minuses. That's the whole thing with Jilly Juice, is balancing the pluses and the minuses in your body, the positives and negatives. And so I know that if we can reverse the aging process, which we're doing on Jilly Juice, then the life of the universe, there's got to be some kind of method to the madness of the universe. And then how black holes and gravitational pulls, and then the light, the white dwarfs, the red dwarfs, the yellow dwarf, which is our sun, is a yellow dwarf and eventually turn into a white dwarf after so much time. But why doesn't a black hole, which is like a death, why doesn't a black hole swallow a white dwarf? They actually they orbit each other. They are countering each other's forces to where it forces them into an orbit if a black hole gets a hold of a white dwarf. But how does a black hole get a hold of a white dwarf? Because actually it was a red dwarf. And this is what I found on the internet through the different credible sources, is that for a black hole I asked Google, can a black hole swallow a white dwarf? Because a white dwarf is a very, very, very new star. It's very powerful in its light and its force. And it's like, no, it actually, the black hole will try to swallow what's in its path, and a red dwarf would be in its path. But the reason why a red dwarf would be somehow affected by the black hole would be the gravitational pull. And so that gravitational pull from the black hole strips the red dwarf lining off of that star and turns it into a white star, and then they get stuck in an orbit. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's interesting. Why didn't the black hole swallow the white dwarf? Oh, because that energy that's emitted from the white dwarf is so strong, it's able to counter it. And I'm like, okay. And so I think that the actual black holes are the balance of the universe, and they do influence the evolution. They're kind of like the maggots, on Earth. They eat up all of the matter that is decaying. Okay? And so black holes only go after the weakest matter in the universe. We live in a solar system, and the nearest black hole that scientists have been able to measure is like 1,000 light years away. And that's still pretty far away. It's not within our solar system. It's not within our galaxy. Or maybe it's in our galaxy. I don't know. There's like trillions of galaxies, and there's so many stars. I mean, there's like 8 different white dwarfs. There's so many different types of stars. And then there's so much different types of life out there. There's so many I mean, it's so hard to measure, and so hard to even fathom how much probably life there is out there. And there is intelligent life, because we wouldn't know the stuff that we know if it wasn't for some kind of intervention. Because there are, like, humans and scientists have a blind spot. Now, I could say that Manly P. Hall and all these different philosophers of our time know all this stuff, but they ended up dying anyways, right? And so they only understand our existence from the language that was given to us from many, many years back. And so they only circulate within a very specific limitation, within a specific paradigm, no different than politics, religion, and science. Okay, it circulates, and it works within a very limited existence. And a belief system is, yes, one of the premises of what keeps people limited within a specific idea. And so if scientists like Einstein and Hoyle is one that did panspermia and didn't like the whole Big Bang theory. Big Bang is where there's a beginning and then there's an end. Well, there isn't just like a beginning. I think the universe has been in existence for infinity, and each little Big Bang is actually the promotion of life. And so when all the scientists in our society believe that people should die, then it's going to be hard for them to look at the infinite universe. It's going to be hard for them to look at the fact that the universe has probably been around for more than we can even count, like infinite, like 1 divided by 0. That's, where something is created from nothing, but is really nothing. No, nothing is everything. Everything is nothing. Everything just exists. It just exists. Is there a beginning? Is there an ending? Not really. The only ending is if you are like, matter that is so weak that a gravitational pull can go and gobble you up, like out there in outer space. And so then the reason why I'm studying this is because it's going to then substantiate my jilly juice, and then the belief that people can live indefinitely, so as long as life can be held on Earth. And so I look at people who are aging and degrading are types of like stars that are going through its stages. That's something I have not figured out until now. So humans are like stars. People say, oh yeah, we're from the stars. We're stardust, right? Well, yeah. And so humans go through a stage of a star, but they don't realize they have the intelligence to keep the light going. So as long as we're able to have, light on this universe, like in this solar system. So as long as the sun is shining, then you still have the ability to live, so as long as you know how to work with the elements. Okay? And so I see humans as going through the stages of a star where eventually they turn into a black hole. And when they turn into a black hole, they try to envelop as many people as they can. And that's why when people who are going through cancer, disease, and chronic illness, or they talk about death and how everything, there's somebody died and everyone's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. They are attracting all the weakest links in their world. And people are like, oh, I'm so sorry. Here, here's my energy. I'm going to give you my energy. And so they are siphoning the energy from the people around them. And that's what a black hole does. And that's what a dying star does. That's what a red dwarf star does. It is probably it's not as like the highest energy, but it's enough energy to show that it's on its way out the door. It's angry. That's why you see the angry faces. Those are the people that need the help the most. Those are people that are like dying, and they're very angry, and they're trying to get as much energy, but also they're emitting so much energy that other people are feeding off of that. And so humans are like the stages of a star. So the yellow dwarf star, which is our sun, is like a teen star. It's a middle-aged star that still has life left to it. It's like in the middle of its cycle. And so that's how I see humans. So when humans are on their way out the door and they're in hospice or something, they're like a black hole. They are. And also humans that are like kind of like the Walking Dead, and they just kind of lost their luster. They lost their kind of their life. They have a little bit of life. They stay in their very, very, limited clicks and ideas. And they've kind of given up on the fact that they could live indefinitely. And so they just kind of go about waiting for the Earth's gravitational pull to just pull them apart. And that's what happens in a black hole. It takes the weakest matter in society and basically spaghettifies it. And then how does black holes emit light? Well, they don't really emit light. It's just this event horizon, which is when there is matter and stars that escape the gravitational pull, and they emit light when they are escaping. They're countering the force of the gravitation. So those are the photons that actually are emitting light around the black hole, because a very strong black hole will take all the light that around it, but there's not always the things that are around that black hole will actually get sucked in. And so it's interesting that when my parents, they bought a VCR a long time ago, and it was called a quasar back in the 80s. And I looked at quasar, okay, quasar. And then I looked up what quasars are. They're really very strong, huge, observable, like the hugest observable black hole. But our unobservable universe is probably bigger than the observable universe that we know. So a black hole can be the balancing force, okay? And even though we see a black hole maybe bigger than our solar system, the solar system can be way bigger than that largest quasar. And so then a VCR is like a black hole. You put in the tape, and it's like a black hole. Then you get sucked into that whole energy sucking thing, which is like watching movies and stuff. But you have to be able to counter all that sucking energy. So then I'm looking at that's when I'm looking at like Fred Hoyle and the steady state theory. The steady state theory is where things can be proportional and live in a kind of a static universe, but then what would cause then the influence of then life? And that's the Big Bang. And the Big Bang is when you have a star that explodes, a supernova, and then it turns into a black hole. But that explosion then is the force that creates then the balance of plus and minuses. It influences space weather, influences, Earth weather, it influences everything. And so that's where you get that activity in the universe. And that's where sound is the conception, the point of conception, because you get no sound, you don't get a conception. You look at it here on Earth, if somebody is mute and they can't even communicate in such a way, then they don't have any kind of influence over you. That's why we have the ability to mute people on Facebook so they don't cast spells of their words. And so that's how then we realize that sound carries notes, which is a language. And this is where I'm leading to, is that language, words create realities. And what I'm trying to do is change the reality that, you don't have to die. You can actually live indefinitely, but there is a science behind it. And how I'm proving it is because a black hole cannot swallow up a very bright star. They'll strip the red dwarf lining off of a white star, but they cannot swallow a white star. They actually orbit each other. They're countering each other. And I'm like, oh my God, this is pretty awesome. And so yesterday I was just reading so much information, like reading, because I got to get out of this conspiracy bullshit. Excuse my language, but I got to get out of the conspiracy stuff. I got to get out of the activism. I do not want to assume that the powers that be are evil. It's more that they are providing a balance, because we're able to manipulate humans on this earth through operations, through biochemistry, through word chemistry. And we also have a lot of unbalanced energy on this earth. And so there must be a balancing force. So when you have 7 billion people who are just wailing all over the world and causing destruction, you got to have at least, a group of people that are like, okay, this is insane. We're dealing with too much crime, disease, people with issues. We've got to find a way to balance that out. And so, yes, viruses are a balancing force. They are the evolution of any type of biodiversity. And so relative to your star, relative to where you are on the star lifespan, okay, and you can still keep emitting light if you understand what it takes, what constituents it takes to keep creating light, you will be affected, you'll be destroyed by the energy, because viruses are transducers, and then gravity also has come into play. Or you can be destroyed by it, or you can evolve. And that's really what Earth is going through. It's going through evolution. And yes, it could be influenced by the participants that know this stuff on this Earth, but then you have the ability to know this if you get out of your own way. I put so much information, and my gut is so clear, I can absorb all the stuff that I used to have a problem with. A couple, like I'd say 6 months ago, reading about black holes and Einstein's theory of relativity and all these different theories, it would be like, I feel like it was so over my head that I wouldn't have the patience to go through and read it. But given that I've studied even the basic stuff, like the positive and negatives, all the different theories that are out there, physics, Newton's laws of physics, the first law, second law, third law. Then when you start reading stuff about people's perceptions, or people's writing about different theorists and chemists and, all that, then you start going like, oh, wow, this guy actually has something to say. And so then I'm like, wait, I can actually give credit to Fred Hoyle, who was actually discredited by society, by the scientific society, because they don't believe people, they don't believe people should live indefinitely, and they don't believe in an indefinite universe. And Catholicism and religion believes there's a beginning and there's an ending, like as if there's a life and then there's a death. Well, there is if you're not strong enough. Okay, so we can live, so humans can live as long as a star that gives us light can live. The star fizzles out, we fizzle out. That's just right there. So if a star can be like billions and billions of years old, and we understand how to utilize the elements on this earth, we can live as long as a star that's giving us light. That's a long freaking time. Could you call that? I wouldn't call it infinitely, but I would call it, we can live as long as the star is able to keep us alive, because that star gives us light. It gives us energy. It's like Lucifer. And so I'm like, oh my God. So yes, humans are like stars that are going through its stages. And you don't have to go through that stage as long as as long as the sun keeps shining, you can still keep living. If the sun doesn't shine anymore, then you're dead. All of Earth is dead. And I'm not afraid of a black hole either, because a black hole wouldn't go after something like a yellow star. It's too bright. Black holes go only after weak matter, just like your friends and family. Okay? They're being enveloped from gravity and from other people. They're being cannibalized by other people who are stronger. That's why you have to strengthen your body, mind, and spirit with the J juice, so you can keep the light within you, and you can be stronger than those forces that are trying to pull you apart, which is the activism, which is all the stupid conspiracy stuff, which are the energy vampires that in your world that will just keep feeding off of your energy, feed and feed. And if you don't have the ability to regenerate, guess what? You're going to be cannibalized, just like a black hole cannibalizes a planet that isn't protected by a yellow star, a white dwarf, whatever. And so it's so interesting that, I go into this, I study stuff like there's no tomorrow. I will ask Google everything. I don't play this game of, I'm going to go to DuckDuckGo because Google is so brainwashy. You guys just get off that bullshit. There is so much information on Google. It's unreal. There's so many people that already did the research prior to you, that you can take and understand it for what it is at the micro level and the macro level, and start making the connections in your world. That's what I do. Once you get off the activism train and think that Bill Gates is horrible and Zuckerberg's horrible, then you actually can open up doors of actual knowledge. And then you can start putting together ideas and start making the connections. And then you can use metaphorical types of examples, similes. And then you can start writing and you start developing and then being an architect of your own life. And that is the most powerful gift you can give to not only your friends and family, but to your kids. Our kids are so subject to the black holes in our society, it's unreal. That's why the kids are the most victimized, because they're the weakest. Our kids are the weakest. That's why they are the most trafficked, the most abused, the most exploited. And even parents exploit their own kids. I've seen it in the activist world when it comes to the vaccines. Oh my God, my kid's vaccine injured, so I'm going to exploit the hell out of them and destroy the light out of them by keeping them a victim. Just like, Caroline was saying that she belonged, for a minute when she thought she had an alcohol problem, and she was told by AA that she's a victim for the rest of her life. And guess what? She said, no, I'm not. She asked the Jelly Juice crowd, will Jelly Juice cure my alcoholism? We're just like, well, Jelly Juice isn't a cure, but keep doing the J Juice. And guess what? She's not an alcoholic anymore. She's a Jelly Juice girl now. But she did not allow someone like her parents or someone like society keep her a victim. And so this is the most powerful thing this is the gift. Like, I want to be somebody's fairy godmother when you think about it, because the gift that you can actually not be pigeonholed by the people who are stuck in a black hole, that you actually can be the light in your world. And that takes a parent, that takes a human who is influencing their surroundings to understand how powerful they are and what words they say. And that's when Stevie G in my group, she posted a PDF, 144 pages of the occultic dictionary of definitions. And occultic is everything. Everything is occultic in our society, because everything has to do with magic and spells and energy and using words as a way to produce energy. And so a lot of our words are derived from our physicists, are derived from the elements in the periodic tables. A lot of our words are derived from science. There is a method to even the words. And so, yes, at some point you can train people not to say, life is short, play hard type of BS. But eventually you got to get your body and your spirit. There's only so much you can do to train the mind, but if the body and the spirit are not aligned, then it's just going to be like memorizing stuff. Okay, it's going to be like brainwashed in academia. You can memorize everything, but if your body doesn't really understand it, then it's just going to be like a robot. And then the body dies and the robot dies. Cancer disease and chronic illness and all the different diseases out there is the body trying to live, and people are not supporting it correctly because the belief systems in academia and science are still very limited as far as our paradigms. Our paradigms are so limited. And you see the professors in universities, you see these physicists, they're a light for a minute and then they fizzle out. Why is that? Because they don't know how to support their body correctly, because they don't realize the power does come from salt. It comes from also the covalent bonding of proteins and fatty acids and amino acids and prohormones and minerals and all of that put together. Then the energy and then, all of that then keeps the actual intelligent design. So the whole thing with the Big Bang is, the Big Bang, there's probably 1 billion Big Bangs are going on all over the universe, which is then giving, light and intelligence and life to so many different planets and solar systems. But we only know of the Milky Way because we don't have yet the technology to speak to other intelligent life, though we have been obviously touched by, or we don't know. See, here's the thing. There's two sides of our society. There's society that says, okay, we've never had alien intervention. And then there's the other side of society where, yeah, we actually have alien intervention. But if we actually said that in mainstream, people would flip out. So there still must be this duality of people believing that they're still searching for life, but life has already contacted us outside the solar system. And that's why we've been given this information. Because let me tell you, the blind spot in our society is that we don't know things until someone tells us. Well, who was the original person that told us all the knowledge of words and energy and all this stuff, right? Well, it had to be something from outside. Just like when a baby doesn't know anything and you as a mother teach that baby, it's like humans. Something was taught to that human that first human that's able to actually process information. And so yes, that's the blind spot of our society, is that someone had to tell us. But who was that someone, and where do they come from? Well, infinite universe. Infinite universe. There is no beginning, there is no ending. It, yes, expands and it contracts, red shift, blue shift. But then all the different black holes and all the different stars that are like white dwarfs and yellow dwarfs, they are the balancing force, the pluses and minuses in the universe to keep the balance. And that's why we're not being enveloped by a billion black holes, because the star is protecting us. The light is protecting us. But if that star starts dying, turns into a red dwarf, then yeah, we're going to see different stuff on it, but that's going to be for billions of years. Okay, and scientists are still studying the amount of energy that our current star is emitting, so to measure to see, are we at a point where it's a red star? Well, not yet. We're still in the teen years, the midlife of a star. And so humans are like stars going through its stages. But humans have been around for thousands and thousands and billions or millions of years. And so if a human has been on this earth at some point millions of years, and imagine what the possibilities for a human that actually can stay alive, so as long as the light keeps shining, they're not stuck underground somewhere. And so that's the possibility of J juice, is that we can capture the light from not only the sun but also within our body, and then use the chemistry behind the proteins and the acids and all of that. And so you must understand that everything is connected. You can't just study biochemistry and not think that astrophysics is not connected. Oh, it's very much connected. You know, I see some of you that are still stuck in your biophysical stuff, but you don't study astrophysics. That's so connected. Why not study all that stuff? Everything is connected. Why stay stuck in your compartmentalized politics, religion, and science, your debatable science that are like in so compartmentalized limited form? Understand the bigger picture is how you're able to see then how you have control over your life, so as long as the sun keeps shining. And so, yes, I'm forging this path of understanding it all, that you don't have to go to college to understand this stuff. Now you go to college to get certified and to learn basics. Well, you learn basics in compulsory education, then you go to college to learn more basics like general education. But then when you get to the specialization, then you get the spin, you get the propaganda, and then you get all the belief systems. And so at some point, you know, if you want to devise your own business or your own invention, you got to get out of these very rigid institutions like academia, like the scientific society. And then you take all of the information from the PhDs and you devise your own hypothesis. Because you can prove your theories if they're actually sound and they're actually aligned. You can prove your theories through other experiential circumstances that were proven. Yes, you know, right there, binary stars, and they orbit each other. Well, they're countering each other's forces, okay? They orbit. They're not, one isn't swallowing the other. If one swallows the other, it means that one is more powerful and they wouldn't be orbiting each other. My husband and I orbit each other. We're both a positive and negative. A black hole and a white dwarf can orbit each other because they're countering each other. All right? But our solar system won't go through that yet until our star actually starts dying. And when our star actually starts dying, we're going to start dying. And then, yes, black holes will be attracted. We'll turn into either it'll be a supernova, or another black hole will try to go and swallow that star. But this is some basic information, really, because all this is all over the internet. It's through credible sources. There are PDFs and there are other types of peer-reviewed studies in academia that you can read. That if you actually can take the time, you can read it. But first, develop your own hypothesis, or else you'll be subject to somebody else's belief system. But you're really, I mean, I'm coming from the point of indefinite life, that you can live indefinitely, you know, so as long as the star shines. And so now I'm looking for evidence to support my theory in other ways, and then to say, okay, should you have discredited Fred Hoyle's hypothesis or Fred Hoyle's theories of panspermia? That maybe there is a static universe with then little explosions as influences like supernovas and black holes are in the picture somehow, keeping the balance in the universe, just like here on Earth. You have, you have people that are dying and people that are reproducing, and then people who are reproducing at the micro level that stay alive indefinitely, and people who are reproducing at the macro level who are getting pregnant. And those are the girls in our society. They're out there at the bars. They know they're dying, and they are trying to get pregnant. There is definitely a social, there's definitely a scientific explanation behind social behaviors. When people are on the prowl wanting to find love and all that stuff, they know their body is about to go in the next 10, 20 years, and they're looking to get pregnant to keep that genetic line going. And then people in our society who are not in that method or in that mode are like, oh, that person's this. No, they're dying. And this is how they're exemplifying it. It's not pretty. It's a trip. It's a trip. And so, I lost the need to go to bars and be on the prowl. I'm married, and even if I wasn't married, I wouldn't have the need to go and prowl for anything because I'm not dying. I'm not looking for someone to procreate with. Companionship is one thing, procreation is another thing. Those two have been conjoined in our society, which is great. It's what keeps nation building and keeps, our infrastructure going. But, right now, technology is such where we're not going to need a lot of people to keep the infrastructure going. It can be pretty much automated. And then people are like, oh my God, automation is killing off the jobs. Well, then start evolving to the level of your environment. So anyways, that was a couple days of studying black holes, which I already had kind of foundation with because I studied it before, but I didn't absorb it. Now I'm absorbing like a freaking sponge. At some point when you clear your gut, you can take any information out there and you will not be blocked by the information. You will not be overwhelmed. You would understand. And if you don't know a term or you don't know a word, you'll look it up. Use a dictionary, use a thesaurus, you look at Britannica, Merriam-Webster, dictionary.com, whatever, and you look up all the different meanings, the etymology behind it. You look if it's a verb, a noun, or an adjective. And you start understanding the world that you live in instead of living in this automatic pilot lifestyle, which most people live in automatic pilot. They are so like an animal, just being influenced by their environment and just always reacting. And sometimes it takes, just being silent and being on your own and wanting to learn about the world that you live in. That's what I have found. A lot of my revelations is the fact that I have kind of extricated myself from all the automatic pilot crap. And I want to learn what's going on out there. So that way I got to substantiate my theory. And then writing. I'm telling you guys, if you start writing, you start seeing how it is that you think. And I'll tell you what, when you start writing, it's difficult. It's like I have all these, I could say a bunch of stuff, right? But when you actually write, there has to be a type of structure to your writing, an organization. And when you start writing, start organizing your writing, you can organize your thoughts. And then guess what? Your communication is going to be so on point. So you watched me from the beginning, maybe, if you've been around for a while. My first video, I did not even have the video on me. It was like pointed somewhere else. And I was just talking about jelly juice with the information I had at the time. Over time, I did videos like every weekend or every Sunday. I did every Sunday morning lives, right? And I switched to done almost every day as I started evolving. So that's why I say that a lot of the evolution will come from your proficiency in, you will exhibit your evolution through the proficiency in verbal and written communication, and then biophysical communication, where your systems are talking to each other, promoting light and life. And then you are just this beam of light to people of hope and possibility and change and hope and change. I'm not trying to be like Obama, okay? But seriously, we all need to be that light in our society. A light to our kids, a light to our animals. My dog last night, it was so funny at around 1 o'clock, she's been going through her evolution and stuff, and she's been sleeping in and all that. But last night she barked at me to go to the bathroom twice. And this doesn't usually happen. She usually barks at least once, if that. But last night she barked at me twice, or she got up twice and barked at me once and got up twice, whatever. but she was just running around the house. Like she was going in circles through the house at least 10 times, as if like she was like, on this journey like they do over there in that big black cube. I forget. It's like some kind of what I forget. It's in Israel, but she was doing that because we have like a house that has the middle, and then she can go. All the rooms are like this, and so she's going in circles for like at least 10 times around the house, just, and then she goes upstairs and she just goes to sleep. And so she's going through her biochemical changes and she's evolving. She actually, the first time I've ever seen her do this is when my husband has food. Okay, and we give her stuff out of her plate, and I was giving her some of my stir fry, and she tried to knock the my husband's plate off his lap so she could eat it. She's never done that before. And he was on the phone with his friend Kevin. He's like, yeah, sugar, smart. She's never done that before. My dog is evolving. And I'm like, you know what? She's doing that because before she used to be afraid to do that, because I think she was when in a prior household, she was hit or something, or she was manhandled more than she should have been. And so I always think that the reason why she doesn't do anything that's horrible is because she doesn't want to get hit, right? We would never really hit her. But then when she started trying to knock the food off his lap, and I'm like, oh my God, she feels safe enough to try to eat his food. I think that's so awesome. And it was funny. Jason's like, sugar, And I'm like, no, that's an evolution. My dog is evolving like you would not believe. Her skin is amazing. Her fur is so soft. It's like a blanket. She has no fleas, no ticks. She's still evolving inside. I mean, she still has a little tiny tumor, which is growth on top of her head, but that's because, she might have a microchip still in her body. And she's still going through evolution. But she's very, very intuitive. And so our animals and our kids and all that stuff, if they're doing the J juice, they're going to go through evolution, and it's not always going to be easy. Sometimes they'll pee the bed for a while. Sometimes they'll go through different seizures. Sometimes they'll have the different, symptoms that you're like, oh my God, but it's just evolution. I mean, my husband last night, oh my God, he felt like major muscle spasms in both of his legs and his calves. And I'm like, oh, I went through that the other night. The other night I had the worst excruciating pain in my right calf. I used to have that actually when I was younger, when I used to play a lot of soccer and sports, and the muscle spasms would be so intense in my midlife that I remember like just in the middle of the night when I would stretch, like you just stretch involuntarily, and all of a sudden my leg would just stiffen up and it wouldn't get out of it, and then the muscles would just spasm and it would just be so painful. And it happened the other night, but it hasn't happened since then. It only happened once during my now my adulthood, really. As far as the last 10 years. And so, but it happened to him last night in both of his legs. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what's going on. So, and I've heard people on Facebook say, oh God, I'm in so much pain. So this virus is definitely affecting a lot of people's predispositions. And, and I'm saying, this virus is going to age people so quickly. And I kind of told that to my husband, like, this virus is going to age. You'll survive you'll survive your symptoms until you won't. But I'm telling you, this virus is going to age people so extremely fast if you don't counter that piezoelectricity. And then, yes, you're always going to be around gravity. Gravity is a force. And you always have to counter a little bit of the gravitational force and counter the energy that's trying to like rip you apart. Okay? And that goes for the people that you hang out with, the people that you orbit with. Though I'm always orbiting with a lot of negative charged people who have some positive charge, but they believe people should die. They're, doing all their stuff that isn't very destructive. Am I going to get caught up in that black hole? No, because my energy is so strong. My light is so strong that will counter any kind of force like that. And then with that energy that's so strong comes strategy. And so we humans have the intelligence to develop strategies to counter black hole gravitational force type of people. And so this is what I offer you guys, is I'm giving you the light, just no different than the sun, to be able to counter the black holes in your world. And there are many black holes in your world that will try to eat you up. I'm so serious. It's the people next to you. It's the people that are in your circles. It's all of your activist friends and all the people that you cohort with. because you want to find some kind of common ground. But do you really have a common ground? Maybe you do. Maybe you don't want to live. Maybe you don't really want to live indefinitely. You don't really believe that at the core, but you're like, oh yeah, Jelly Juice is great. I just want to cure my little issues, but that's it. That's all I'm gonna do is Jelly Juice is for a cure. Okay, well then, yeah, you found your cohorts. You found the people that you align with. Those are on the destructive process. And so, yeah, actions do speak louder than definitely words. And so I recognize that. And so at some point, when the rubber meets the road, do you really believe that you actually can live like the sun with all the right chemistry, or eventually are you going to be a black hole? And so this now I get it. And so yeah, my the first beginning of my book is going to talk about words and chemistry, but also talk about what life is. The conception of life comes from sound. Sound comes from electromagnetism. Electromagnetism comes from the sun, the light. No sound can happen in a vacuum unless there's electromagnetism that can ride on it. And that's where notes and words and communication come from. And then, yes, the intelligence of the body. Without light, you don't have sound, you don't have life. And there you go. All right, you guys, have a good day. Bye.